take a short break from our series on the church, and because as we were in Wednesday night Bible class, we had a verse from Habakkuk, and that just reminded me how accurate to today the book of Habakkuk is. That it has a message for us that it's timeless, but it seems to me that it could have, Habakkuk could have been living next door to us. You know, it seems to be very close to our time, and so I think it would be really important. Some of the things that God can teach us through this book. I want you to turn to Habakkuk, the first chapter, verses 1 and 2. The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not save? You ever felt your prayers weren't being answered? He was feeling that his prayers were not being answered. And I like the fact that here's a man that is so in tune with God that his conversation with God is put into the Bible. So if there's a time that sometimes I don't understand God and maybe get a little bit angry at him, well, so did Habakkuk. In fact, there have been times that I said, Lord, why me? Why did this happen? I don't understand. But I was never quite as mean about it as Habakkuk is. You know, Habakkuk is just plain. It's almost like he's shaking his finger at God and going, you know, how long? So, one of the first lessons we can learn is it's okay if you don't understand. And you want to ask God, why? You want to go, I don't get it. This doesn't seem right. God wants to talk to you even when you're not happy. You know, that's the thing. We've been trained that prayer is something we do in church, and it has all these special phrases, and it's about only certain things. But prayer is talking to God. And just like when we talk to our earthly fathers, sometimes we talk about the things we're supposed to, but sometimes we just got to talk to them. And that's what Habakkuk is doing. He's upset. He doesn't understand what's going on. Now we're going to read verses 3 and 4. Why do you make me see iniquity? And why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. Doesn't like that. Doesn't like what he sees. Everything is upset. You ever look at that? Feel that way? That things are just wrong? Well, he goes on even more, and when we go down to verses 5 through 11, we're going to see just how close to our world Habakkuk is living in. I'll start back with 3 and read on down. Why do you make me see iniquity, and why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. Wow. That sounds like the world we're living in. The courts, instead of upholding right, uphold wrong. Mm-hmm. And when justice is done, it's perverted. It's just, when I read this, it makes me feel good in that we're not the first generation to go through this. We're not the first generation to ever have everything go wrong. And for him, it's worse. Because this country has been touted as a Christian nation. But God never said it was a Christian nation. He never said that the United States of America was his kingdom. But he did for Israel. It was God's kingdom. God was the true king. It followed all of his rules. That's why when you read Leviticus, you find all sorts of rules that you wouldn't think would be in a religious book. Because it's their entire law book. It's their penal code. It's everything. It's their civil and penal code. So when their justice is perverted, I expect us human beings to mess up. But this was God's kingdom, and when it got messed up, that's bad. Now, this next part of the lesson here, I call this, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for. Because God is higher than us. God does things in ways that we don't. And Doug was talking about miracles weren't for personal use. Absolutely right. There's another thing. When God sticks his finger in the world, instead of, because most of the time God doesn't nudge. He doesn't nudge. But when he sticks his finger in, and sometimes when we pray, we're asking for God to stick his finger in the world and do more than nudge, Because when I pray for people with cancer, I pray that God will stick his finger in and will kill those cancer cells. I want more than a nudge. I want them dead. But be careful what you ask for, because when God sticks his finger in the world, he usually doesn't stick his finger in. He sticks the whole fist in. He doesn't do anything small because he's God. Habakkuk was not too pleased with God's answer. Read down in verse 5. He goes, look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded. Basically saying, I haven't done anything yet because I'm preparing something. And it's going to be a doozy. For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. They make right and wrong. That's what it says. Their justice comes from themselves. They make their own right and wrong. And their dignity is not in anything moral or anything else. Their dignity is in themselves. That's... Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. The horsemen press proudly on. Wow. Habakkuk says, I'm going to fix this, but the only way I can fix it is I've got to shake you up. I've got to take you into captivity. I've got to, and this is going to be something. The world's going to look at this. It is going to be something. They're going to come to it. Can't you almost hear Habakkuk go, well, yeah, I didn't want you to do that, Lord. I just wanted you to, zap us back. Sometimes it takes tough love. Sometimes it takes tough love. I hope our nation will come back to its senses. But I'm afraid that it may take some tough love that we're not well-minded. It may take something like the Chaldeans. So he goes on and he goes down here. I'm going to skip down to verse 12. He goes, are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. You have adorned them as a judgment, and you, O rock, have established them for reproof. He's going, I don't like it, but I guess it's okay. I'm not too happy. Then he goes, you who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? And he's going to go on in that. But he's basically saying, I know this is your judgment, God. This is what your judgment is. But you're so precious. You're so holy. You're just so wonderful. How can you do that? How can you use these evil people to do good? How can you basically reward the unrighteous? Because the Chaldeans are going to come in, they're going to plunder, they're going to take, they're going to... Lord, how can you let... You're punishing us for being wrong, but we're not as bad as they are. What's going on here, Lord? I don't get it. And he spends most of the second chapter explaining. I'll start with second chapter, the second and third verse. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. He says, this is going to happen. It's not going to delay. And then he goes on for the rest of that chapter and explains what's going to happen to the Chaldeans. He says, it'll be made right. Don't you worry. They're not going to get away with what they do. God has used evil people as tools. But in the end, what he's trying to say. He wants them to understand that. Go down here to this and the end of the second chapter. After God has been explaining to him, they'll get theirs, don't you worry, but you guys need this. I know it's not pleasant. Can't you just I could almost see my dad in that position. This is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me. You know, Dad, I don't want to do this, but I've got to. But it'll come out in the end. It'll be okay. Verse 2 and 20. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. With all of this, Habakkuk says, God's in his holy temple. Everybody keep silence before him. God is holy. But I think the most important lesson we can get is in the third chapter. The entire third chapter is Habakkuk's prayer. But I want to go down to verse 16. Because it's all good, but it distills down at the end. It goes, I hear and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me. Yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. He says, I don't like it. It scares me. It's like my bones are rotten. It's just, there's no way that I like what's going to happen. That's what he's saying. He's talking to God. He says, I'm telling you the truth, God. I don't like it. Yet, I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon the people who invade us. I trust that you're going to do the right thing, and I will wait for when they get theirs. I understand. And then he goes, though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vine, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Pretty much for ancient Israel, that's about as bad as it gets. Fig trees don't blossom. Figs were a big part of their daily sustenance, their life. They needed the figs, nor fruit be on the vines. Grape harvest is done. The olives fade. The fields yield no food. The wheat, the barley, you're talking a pretty good famine there. The flock be cut off from the fold. The fold is where the flock comes for rest, or the flock's out there, they're lost. There's no herd in the stalls. That is total disaster. that is worse than the Great Depression in the United States. The Great Depression in the United States was a terrible thing, an awful thing in the cities. It wasn't pleasant for my grandparents and my mom and dad as kids. But they lived out here. And the crops didn't all fail. The people in the city were lined up at the soup lines to get maybe a little bit of soup. They didn't have much. But every once in a while they had a chicken for the pot. They had food. Habakkuk is saying, if everything is destroyed, if we don't have anything to eat, and we are starving, he says in verse 18, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. He says, even if we're so hungry and there's nothing to eat, I will not only thank God, I will rejoice and have joy in my God. Because he's the God of my salvation. I know it's coming. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on high places. In the worst of times, God is still God, and he's going to take care of us. That's the message of Habakkuk. To take joy in the worst. Which means, what I take from this, and, every once in a while, maybe more often than you think, preachers do not preach to you. Most of the time we preach to ourselves. Because we know where we fail. We know what we need. We guess about you. We know about ourselves. So a lot of times we preach to ourselves. He says that he will take joy in God and rejoice in the Lord. That means I need to stop being so down in the mouth about what's going on in the world. And so woe is me and all of that. I need to say, God's going to take care of it. I don't care. I don't know how. I don't know when. Don't care. Because I have joy in the God of my salvation. Both physical and spiritual. And that means I need to change my attitude. Christians, we need to turn that frown upside down. We need to smile even in the world today. If anybody needs to answer the invitation in a public way, as you come now as we stand and as we sing.